So I'm out with Richo at the moment. We've got a Range Rover Evoque. Gonna ask him a question about this problem that had a few people scratching their heads. Hey Richo.
Yo.
All right.
Okay.
So give me the story and some common problems with the Range Rover Evoque.
Well, I'm going to give you the problem with this Evoque. I had a few people scratching their heads. So, all right, the story is the owner drives it to work. While she's driving, it's perfectly fine. She comes to a stop in traffic. It sits idle for a minute or so, and then she goes to accelerate and it's lost all power. No warning lights, no other issues, no rattles, no obvious noises. It just will not accelerate. Be lucky if it gets to 30 k's an hour. So it fully derates itself. If she pulls over, lets it rest for a minute or two, starts it again, gets moving, we're all back to normal.
Okay, so that's the problem, Rich. That is the problem with this car, or the symptoms.
Yep.
What's the solution?
It took a little bit of playing around, actually. Had to get it up to temperature. Got it to play up after parking it in the car park, letting it idle for 5 minutes, and then I couldn't even get out of our own driveway. So plugged the scan tool into it and just looked for any sort of indiscretions or inconsistencies in the data, and found that the fuel temperature was incredibly high. And when I say high, I mean over 100 degrees, 120 degrees in some circumstances. I have noticed that the fuel filter pretty ridiculously mounted on the engine block itself on a cast iron bracket above a heat exchanger between the radiator and the engine. So it's just got all this heat soak. But what the issue was, there's a thermostatic valve inside the filter. And what that's designed to do is it recirculates the fuel when the engine's cold around through the filter back into the engine, so it doesn't return to the tank. Problem is that valve gets stuck and it never opens. So that fuel just continues to recirculate between the fuel filter and the engine without actually returning to the tank, and it pulling in cold fuel. That causes the fuel temperature to spike, and when the fuel temperature goes up that high, the engine knows that there's something wrong, the ECU knows there's something wrong, so what it does is it limits the amount of fuel entering the engine, it shuts it down, it derates it, so that it protects the pump and the injectors. A $48, $50 fuel filter was the cause of this issue.
So you replaced a fuel filter, the car's back driving, but when we say it had a few people scratching their heads,
DPF was fine, airflow meter was fine, and like I said, just by studying the data and looking for something that we know through experience is not right, this being a ridiculously high fuel temp, is what we led down the path to find out that there is actually a little thermostat inside the fuel filter that stopped the fuel from returning to the tank.
there you go, Range Rover Evoque. So if you do have one of these and you are getting these weird symptoms, it's certainly not the first time. When you looked into it further, you found out other people had the same symptoms.
Yep.
We just thought we'd do a video and explain, hang on a second, you guys can save yourself a lot of money and a lot of heartache if you watch this video about a Range Rover Evoque.